beef cow nutrition. Dr. Guillermo Scaglia, who is our AgCenter researcher, beef cattle researcher, still has some duties down in Iberia, but I think most of those duties are moving eventually up to Dean Lee. Guillermo has been tasked with basically rebuilding the beef cattle infrastructure at Dean Lee. It's a pretty major undertaking, but trying to improve or increase the visibility of beef cattle research there at Dean Lee. He is a ruminant nutritionist. If you've never heard him talk before, yes, he does have an accent.
And it's not Cajun?
He is from Uruguay originally. I had an opportunity to go to South America with Guillermo on an ag leadership trip. He went with us. We went to, started out in Chile and went over to Argentina. He was definitely an asset to a bunch of redneck boys who got dropped in an airplane in South America. He was definitely an asset to us. But Guillermo is a great help to us in terms of ruminant nutrition, does a lot with grass-fed beef also. Anytime I need help in that aspect, he's also one that I reach out to for that advice. So Guillermo, thank you for driving up, and I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Jason. Good morning, everybody. Yes, I have an accent. It's not Cajun. I work at Iberia, so I'm full of them around, but I'll try to do what I think is necessary for the region and the state, but at the same time, I'm always keep my ears open and open to suggestions, especially from producers, in terms of what needs to be done in terms of basically research. As Jason was saying, I do a lot of also extension activities, so here I am. I was just handing out this paper, so if you have it, we're going to go through it in this presentation. The only thing that I assure you is if I see the food coming, I will stop talking, I promise, so we can have lunch. All right, so Jason called me one day and said, hey, do you mind giving a talk about hay quality and animal requirements? And I said, sure, no problem. Well, we can get samples from some bales that are produced at the Goldmine Plantation, send it to the lab, we'll get the results, and we'll go from there. And I said, sure, go ahead, fine. So saying that, and since I'm going to be talking about that, I want to know a couple of things. Raise your hand. How many of you make hay? How many of you send samples to the lab for analysis? Sometimes. Okay, the same way that Wink was talking about soil fertility and soil analysis and the need for fertilization, how do you know how the hay is if you don't analyze it? All right? The same as with the soil. How do you know how much fertilizer to apply if you don't do the soil analysis? And this is the same story. And the reason I'm saying it is, yeah, well, hay quality sometimes can be really bad. I can hear you talking, and I just start laughing. So it can be good enough, and you may not need to supplement that hay with something else. But it can be also the low quality type of hay, and if you're going to feed your cows or your calves or whatever class of cattle, you may need to add something else to that hay for that animal to gain or to produce the way it should. You know, there are many things that can affect animal requirements, many factors, okay? But the genetic potential of the animal to produce is one of them. And if you have animals with genetic potential for whatever, milk production or gain, okay, or body weight gain. If you have animals that are actually really good at gaining weight, or cows to produce milk, if you don't feed them appropriately, they are not going to produce as much as they can. So why do you have animals with high genetic potential if you're not going to feed them the way they should be fed? Another thing is that, I don't know if you're aware, but 65% of the costs in a farm is actually feed for cattle. Okay? So 65, do the math whenever you can, but 60 or 65% of the feed, of the cost, in the farm is feed. When I'm saying feed, I'm referring to everything: forages, standing forages, or hay production, or feed that you buy at the feed store. Okay? So it's a lot of money that goes into the nutrition of the herd. So as much, as much more you can know about what you are actually feeding and how your animals respond to the feed and how or what genetic potential those animals have, the better you're going to be. So going back to the hay analysis, that first table where it says Bermuda grass, sample information, near analysis results, proteins, energy, they are in green. So I put a couple of arrows on, first of all, it says package, basic, near infrared. That's one of the analyses that can be done. Okay, near infrared is a piece of equipment that will give you the data or the analysis of the feed stuff that you're analyzing really quickly. You will have the results in just a couple of days once the sample hit the lab. The other type of analysis is what we call chemistry or basic chemistry or wet chemistry, and that takes a little bit more time. Okay, you may have the results back in 10, 15 days. But many of them give you the data probably that you will need. Now, getting to specifics, I told Jason, I said, just go with the basic analysis. Let's don't get too fancy on the results that we are going to get. We are going to be talking basically just about crude protein and energy or TDN, total digestible nutrients. That's what TDN stands for. So we are going to be talking, as I said, just about protein and energy, but you can get a lot of data from the analysis. And of course, as much as if you pay more for the analysis, the more type of information you're going to get. But again, going back to just protein and energy. First of all, this was a Bermuda grass hay. It was a Bermuda grass bale. And it says crude protein 14.6 and TDN 58.4%. All right? For those of you that did analysis before from Bermuda grass hay, are those good numbers in terms of protein and energy? They're really good, really, really good. I can't remember, I know Jason told me, but I can't remember exactly what was the management of the Bermuda grass for in terms of fertilization and management itself, but it...
It's a mix of poultry manure and commercial, it's a mix.
Okay, there you go, in terms of the fertilization, right? As I think Wink was saying too, hay production takes a lot of nutrients out of the soil. You need soil analysis, and as long as you put the nutrients back, you're going to get better production, of course, in terms of not only in terms of the quality, but also, of course, in terms of the amount of hay you can produce. So going back to the data, protein and energy, as I said, they are really good numbers for Bermuda grass hay. If you get this type of information or this type of numbers, you're doing things really, really well. All right, so you have the value for protein and energy from your hay. Good. Then we go to the next table where it says the beef cow weight. It says, let me read the first line. Beef cow, 1,200 pounds, superior milking, first 3 months postpartum. And then the columns, they read dry matter intake, 24 pounds, crude protein, 12, TDN, 64%. All right, that means that a beef cow with a 1,200 pound weight that produce a lot of milk during the first 3 months postpartum, those are the months that the animal produces the most milk during the whole lactation, she will need 24 pounds of dry matter that contain 12% crude protein and 64 TDN. All right? Makes sense? It's just data from tables that are really easy to get. So you have in the next line another cow, the same weight as the first one, but produce less milk. And we are on the first 3 months after parturition or postpartum. As you can see, that cow, just because produces less milk, needs less dry matter, just a pound, but it's less dry matter, only 9% crude protein and 56% TDN. So a lot less of protein and energy in terms of requirements. And the only difference between those two cows is the capacity to produce milk of that animal. What I'm saying to you is, if your cows are highly producing cows in terms of milk, their requirements are going to be high. So if you want those cows to produce that much milk, you're going to need to feed them accordingly. A beef cow, the same weight in the last trimester of pregnancy, the last 3 months before calving. At that point in time, 22 pounds of dry matter, 8% crude protein, a lot less, 53% TDN, a lot less than a postpartum with high milking ability. Finally, a beef cow that is that is not lactating, dry, second trimester of pregnancy, she will need less dry matter, less protein, less energy. So, what I'm saying with that is, physiological status of the animal is important. You need to know where those cows are in terms of their pregnancy, because in the middle gestation, in the middle 3 months of gestation, requirements are lower than in the last third of gestation, and those are even lower than the ones that same animal may have after calving. So again, knowing what we are managing in terms of the herd or how we are managing the herd, we can also do a lot of saving in terms of what we are feeding to those animals. Does it make sense? We put the money when they really need to be fed. Then comes the math in terms of what or to know if we need to supplement or not. And those are the bunch of numbers under those tables. And it's 22, 23, and 24 pounds of dry matter. 14.6 is the percent crude protein in your hay, okay? So, and the 22, 23, and 24 pounds is the dry matter intake that the animals can get, depending on which animal we are talking about, right? From the table above. So it says that from that hay, if they consume that much dry matter, they will get 3.2, 3.4, and 3.5 pounds of protein. If you do the same math with the dry matter intake, but in this case with the percent TDN, you will have the pounds of TDN from the hay that those animals will be able to get. Does it make sense? You go from 12.8 to 14.0 pounds TDN, depending if you are talking about a pregnant cow or an average milking cow or a superior milking cow. Good? All right, then you go to the requirements. So the first calculation was to know how much they can get from the hay. Then you go to what the animal actually requires in terms of pounds of protein and pounds of TDN. And that for a beef cow, last third of pregnancy requires, and go back to the table again, 22 pounds times 0.08, that's the protein that it needs. It will be 1.76 pounds of protein, and then for the TDN, it will be 11.7 pounds of TDN. Again, you do all the math, the rest I'm not gonna go one by one, but if you look at the numbers in terms of what the animal requires and what they can get from the hay, there is only one number, one value that is in red in your page. That's the 14 pounds TDN from hay that a high milking ability type of cow can get, and her requirements are 15.9. What it means is that she needs to be supplemented because the energy that she can get from the hay is not enough to cover the energy requirements that she has. She requires 15.9 pounds of TDN. The hay can give her 14 pounds. Good? So, in that rectangle with the letters inside, no protein deficiency at all for any class of cows with that hay. That means that the 14.6% crude protein in the hay is excellent for cows. All right, that's fine. They have it covered. You don't need to do anything. The problem is the energy. If your cows are high-producing cows, if you have an average milking type of cow, that hay will be enough in terms of protein and energy. You don't need to supplement that hay with anything. If it is an dry cow, of course, it will be plenty of good forage. But again, if your cows produce a lot of milk, you will need to supplement that hay with a little bit of energy. And then comes, okay, what do I need to use? What can I use to supplement that cow? And I put just a few options in that rectangle over there. You will cover that nearly 2 pounds of TDN with 2.5 pounds of corn gluten feed, 2.3 pounds of cracked corn, 2.1 pounds of whole cottonseed, 2.6 pounds of soybean hulls per head per day. So it's a very good hay for Bermuda grass, but still, depending on the type of animal you have, you may need to supplement no matter what. In this case, you will cover the requirements of energy of that cow, of that high milking cow, with that amount of supplement. You may say, oh, I have access to others. That's fine. I mean, it can be any other supplement as long as you do the math and calculate how much actually you need. And the reason I'm saying do the math is that you may think, oh, 5 pounds is enough. 5 pounds of, let's say, corn gluten feed. Without doing the math, you don't know that that is twice the corn gluten feed that animal needs. All right? The math is very simple. You just go through the requirements of the animal, the amount of nutrients in the hay, you compare, and that's pretty much it. It's really, really easy to do. Any questions so far? All right. Yeah. Okay, go. Shoot.
You talked about feeding cottonseed. I feed a lot of cottonseed. Once we get them cows turned up on cottonseed, we fill the troughs up, and they normally consume every day 5 pounds a day. That's about all we can get a cow to eat. Cattle eat 2.5 pounds a day, and they limit themselves on that. And when you feed the better quality hay, they cut back from the 5 pounds.
You're asking why?
Why?
That's kind of a self-regulation that they can do. What's the problem with whole cottonseed? I mean, there is a problem with that. That's why they don't consume more than 5 pounds.
Makes them have a tummy ache.
Yep, it's too much fat. The fat in the supplement affect the digestion of the fiber in ruminants.
You're saying the cottonseed affects the digestion of the fiber in the rumen?
Mm-hmm. Yep. The microorganisms. Okay. In the rumen, there are millions and trillions of microorganisms that are in charge of the fermentation of the feed that the animal consumes. Carbohydrate, protein, you name it. But carbohydrate fermentation is critical for the animal to get energy. Okay. And fat that is present in the whole cottonseed, or for example in rice bran, can affect the microbes that are in charge of digesting the carbohydrates. So if the animal eats too much fat, those microbes they die, basically. That's what happened. And so the carbohydrates are not digested. Imagine the animal eating hay. If that hay is not digested, the hay doesn't go anywhere until it is digested. So the rumen, we say that it gets impacted. It's basically the hay stays there and it won't go anywhere. You know, it will take a while for the few microbes that are still there after that fat is present in the rumen to actually digest that and move along the GIT. So yes, that's the reason why. That's a belly ache that you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, it works so
Sure, but it may work 2.5 pounds instead of 5.
Whatever she needs, she'll eat.
And that's what I said before. I mean, you may feed 5 and you're happy with it, but maybe she needs just 2.5, and you're feeding. And maybe you're feeding twice what she needs. That's a real thing.
Dr. Kia, it don't seem like to me she'll eat more what she needs, that cottonseed. If depending on the quality of the forage that you put in front of her.
Well, that's true too. I mean, from the stump, if as long as if they have good forage, as you were saying, very good hay, they would probably not eat that much of the supplement.
That's just like if you go on the bellyache just right on cottonseed, you'll never eat it again.
It reduces the intake for sure. Yeah, they will. They will. So that's the point. The other point that I wanted to make, since Cliff was asking about that, is that's another thing that you need to keep in mind when you are supplementing, when you're using byproducts of industry to feed cattle. They may have components or parts of that supplement that may affect the animal. It can be fat, as I said before. It can be too much of a certain minerals. It can be that the protein is not in good shape. For example, corn gluten feed is a byproduct of the corn industry, right? Well, to take out and to produce ethanol and a bunch of other subproducts, they use high temperature. All right, in the process of the industry. A high temperature affects the quality of the protein. All right, it can make it not available for animals. So if you have corn gluten feed that has been produced or has been affected with very high temperature during the process, even the protein is there. You send it to the lab, and it will tell you, yeah, it has 14% crude protein. But it's not good for cattle because they cannot. It's called it denaturalized. It's not available for the ruminant, even though they will eat the corn gluten feed and everything, and the lab data says that the protein is there. It's not good enough. Some other supplements may have too much sulfur, for example, because sulfuric acid is used in the process of the industry. Too much sulfur may also be a problem for cattle too. So what I'm saying is, once you have an idea of what you can supplement, just get into the little things of that supplement that may or may not affect, hopefully not, animal production. Below that there are two names: relative feed value, relative forage quality. Those numbers are used a lot in hay production. Relatively feed value is calculated from the concentration of one of the fractions of fiber. Relative forage quality is a much better predictor of animal performance. So when you have the analysis, when the analysis of the hay come back to you, if you need to look at residual forage quality and not relative feed value. I can go into the details of that if you want to, but the main reason for that is that RFQ has in the calculation, when they do the estimation of the value in the lab, they use digestibility of the fiber in the calculation. So they give an idea of how much digestible that fiber in that hay is. RFV, or relative feed value, doesn't take into consideration digestibility of the fiber. So when you see the value of RFV, I'm not saying not use it, but just to let you know, it's not a good estimator of animal performance once the animal is eating that hay. If you turn the page around, there is a table where my only point, well, number one, it says expected dry matter intake as affected by forage type, maturity, and stage of production. Then the first thing that I want to mention is the word expected. So you expect the animal to eat that. It may or may not. It's the expectation that actually the animal will eat it. But my point only is two things. Low quality forage or low quality hay, the animal cannot eat too much just because of the low quality, the low protein and the low energy, okay? And if it is lactating, she will be able to eat more, or because it's more hungry than if it is dry. So physiological status affect how much they can eat of the same forage, but also the quality of that forage affect how much the animal can eat. Again, a low quality forage, let's do the average, it will be around 2% of their body weight that they can actually consume on a daily basis. So a 1,000-pound cow will eat 20 pounds of dry matter per day, right? As you improve the quality of that forage or of that hay, the animal actually can start eating more, okay? And you get into lush, what is called, let's say, lush growing pasture or silage or baleage. They can eat up to 2.5 or 2.7% of their body weight. Again, a 1,000-pound cow, they 27 pounds of dry matter. They usually want, I mean, you may have one or two that may be, fat like crazy and they will eat a little bit more than that, but on average, the cow will not eat more than 2.5%, 2.7% of their body weight. Again, that's another reason why to know what you're actually feeding, the quality of your hay, the quality of your forage. And finally, because I promised you that when the food was here, I was going to stop talking, the table that is in blue or light blue, that it says hay-based rations for a 600-pound medium frame replacement heifer to gain 1.5 pounds per day. Until now, I was talking about cows. Now, replacement heifers, young animals. Those young animals, they need to grow, all right? The demand of nutrients for growth are huge, are big. They need a lot of protein and they need about a lot of energy. Again, if you have animals with excellent genetic potential for growth, if you don't feed them, they are not going to gain the way they should, all right? And if you don't care about their genetic potential, that's fine with me, it's up to you. I'm just saying that for them to gain the way they should, you need to feed them accordingly. And it says hay quality, percent crude protein, percent TDN, and they give you the values. The one thing I want to mention first and foremost, the first row there, excellent hay quality, 11% crude protein or more, 62% TDN or more. All right, that's excellent stuff. Daily supplement required. Does it say that you need to supplement? It does. So a hay is not enough for growing animals by itself, no matter the quality. If I need to get through with a message, keep that in your head. A hay, doesn't matter the quality, is not enough for a growing animal. So that baby heifer, she will need also 3 pounds of those, as an example, of those supplements that are there, all right? And to finish, to conclude the presentation, I'm going to the end of the table. Very poor hay, 5-7% crude protein, 49-52% TDN. Hay, you cut hay and then you have, like we had in the last couple of days, 5 inches of rain. You cannot get into the field again to bale anything. It went downhill pretty fast. Really bad quality stuff. It will be probably that type of hay that you can get if that happened to you, hopefully not. But truly, there is nothing basically you can do if you have that type of hay to feed young growing animals. Because there is not enough supplement that you can put there. You actually, instead of supplementation, which by the way, supplementation doesn't mean feeding, okay? Supplementation is not feeding. Supplementation is, I'm supplementing, adding to the basal diet something that the animal is missing, okay? So with very poor hay with young growing animals, There is very little you can do with corn, soybean hulls, whole cottonseed, whatever, very little you can do for them to gain the way their genetic potential can allow them to weigh. I'm not saying an animal eating that is not going to gain. It's going to be thin, but it will not grow the way it should. It will be impacted, and maybe if we are talking about a heifer, she will not have a very good response in the herd if she becomes part of it. Finally, the last sentence. And I think the last field day that I was here in 2019, I talked about minerals, or it was the one before, I can't remember. Anyway, but mineral vitamins, free choice. Don't even think about it. The minerals, they have to be out there for them to consume. They need a lot of not only the macro minerals, but also a lot of the micro minerals, zinc, copper, and a few others. They have enormous requirements of these minerals for growing. So keep them out there, keep them feeding them because they need it, no matter what. Any questions? Nope.
What does your hay lose in quality from year after year? Stored?
The quality of the hay.
Quality, say you got carryover and you feed it the next year. What's the average?
You will have, even if it is under the barn, you're going to have some losses. But depending on where it is stored, if you have it outside with no tarps, it's going to be bad. It's going to be really bad. But if you have it in a barn like back there, without access to rain or anything like that, you may have a drop of protein a little bit because it gets dissolved, eliminated from the hay. That brings also the TDN or the energy values a little lower. But it will be, if I have to say a number, it will be maybe a point or two lower than when they were ready to. But again, it depends on the storage, or how well stored they are. All right.
Thank you, Guillermo.
Thank you.